Welcome back, friends. Davis here, and I hope you're settled somewhere warm tonight. Before we begin, tell me something cozy. Do you prefer the crisp bite of cold weather or the gentle comfort of warm afternoons? I always find these little details reveal so much about us. Drop your answer in the comments. Our cozy corner grows with every voice that joins. Now, relax, breathe, and let's step quietly into tonight's Miss Marple mystery. Morning settled quietly over street. Mary Mead. Soft. Still. Simple. Miss Marple liked mornings like this. They felt honest. They moved slowly. They allowed the mind to think before the village began rushing about. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders. Not tightly, just enough to keep the small chill away. She looked out her window. A light mist floated over the garden. Not heavy, just a quiet veil. It reminded her that the village always woke in gentle steps. She checked her small list for the morning. Nothing difficult, nothing urgent. A walk to the lane, a stop by the bakery, and a moment to look in on Mrs. Pemberley, who had been coughing the past 2 evenings. Routine tasks, routine comforts. Miss Marple stepped outside. The air greeted her softly. No wind, no noise. Just the natural hush of early hours in a village that trusted its mornings. Colonel Winterford walked by first. His cane tapped lightly on the ground. He nodded once. He always nodded once. Never twice. Never a wave. The colonel kept habits the same way some people kept pets. Predictably, strictly, comfortably. "Good morning," Miss Marple said. He lifted his chin. "That it is," he replied. He kept walking. He always kept walking. Miss Marple continued toward the high street. Mr. Foxwell was already outside his bakery. He swept the step with slow strokes. Not rushed, not tired, just steady. He looked up as she passed. "Fresh batch in a moment, Miss Marple," he said. He said that every morning. He liked people to know he was reliable. Reliability was his pride. His bread reflected it. Miss Marple smiled. "I'll stop by later," she said. Her steps continued. Quiet, even, thoughtful. Mrs. Darrington appeared next. She walked toward the church with a basket on her arm. She always carried too many items in that basket. Miss Marple had wondered for years how the handle hadn't snapped. Some things in life were sturdier than they looked. Mrs. Darrington waved with a cheerful swing of her hand. "Setting candles for the noon service," she called. "Of course you are," Miss Marple murmured. Mrs. Darrington had volunteered for candle duty for 20 years. She would likely continue for 20 more. Miss Marple turned onto the lane. The mist thickened slightly. Not alarming, not strange. Just enough to soften the houses and edges of the hedges. She knew every detail of this lane. Every crack, every curve, every usual sound. Everything felt peaceful. Expected. Steady. She liked steady. Steady allowed the mind to listen. Steady allowed small details to speak. Steady allowed the truth to surface before anyone else noticed it. Miss Marple paused. Just for a moment. Something brushed the edge of her awareness. A small shift. A missing sound. A faint break in the usual rhythm of the lane. She tilted her head. Calm. Quiet. Thinking. Something was off, but she couldn't see it yet. Not clearly, not fully, not from here. She took one slow breath. Then she stepped forward. Because the moment she reached the next corner, the morning would no longer feel quite the same. Miss Marple reached the corner. Her steps slowed, just slightly. Just enough to let her mind adjust. This part of the lane was always predictable, always steady, always the same. She liked that. She trusted that. Morning routines were important in a village. They kept life honest. She looked ahead. A small shop stood just beyond the hedge. The little stationery shop run by Mr. Flint. He opened early, always early. Before sunrise in winter, before birds in summer. He was one of those people who disliked lateness more than illness. Miss Marple noticed the first detail. The windows were dark, completely dark. Not dim, not faint. Just dark. The shop should have been lit by now. He kept a lamp in the left corner. He always turned it on first. She had seen that lamp glow for years. Today, no glow. Not even a flicker. She stepped closer. Slow, calm, thoughtful. No smoke rose from the chimney above the flat. Mr. Flint lived upstairs. He kept a modest fire in the morning. Always the same hour. Always the same pattern. Reliability was his pride. No fire today. No hint of it. Miss Marple paused at the gate. Her hand rested lightly on it. She didn't push it open. Not yet. She liked to examine the whole picture before touching anything. She looked at the door. The wooden sign hung straight. The mat lay even. Everything looked tidy. But something small felt wrong. Something she could almost sense rather than see. She stepped forward. She tried the handle. It didn't move. Locked. Firmly locked. He never locked the door at this hour. Not in winter. Not in summer. Mr. Flint had once said a shopkeeper must be as punctual as the post. He lived by that rule. Miss Marple leaned a little closer to the glass. She peered through the side panel. Shadows inside. Still. Unchanged. Nothing moved. Nothing stirred. She looked down. The step was clean. No fresh prints. No scuff. No sweeping marks from Mr. Flint's morning routine. He usually brushed away leaves before unlocking the door. Today nothing had been brushed. Nothing had been touched. Miss Marple folded her hands gently. She took a slow breath. Not anxious. Just attentive. Her mind assembled small pieces in their quiet order. Dark windows. No chimney smoke. Locked door. Untouched step. Silence. Behind the glass. Routine broken. Pattern broken. Something broken. Mrs. Darrington walked past on the far side of the lane. She waved again. Miss Marple waved back. But her eyes didn't leave the shop. She leaned closer to the door. She wanted to check one more thing. She always checked small things. Small things revealed more truth than large ones. She lowered her gaze to the edge of the frame, to the ground, to the place where a morning pattern should exist. She saw it. Clear. Simple. Out of place. One mark. Just one. Pressed lightly into the dried mud by the step. Not Mr. Flint's shoe. Miss Marple straightened slowly. Calm. Steady. Certain. Something was off. And it was waiting for her, just beyond this locked door. Miss Marple bent slightly. Not hurried. Not tense. Just careful. Her eyes rested on the mark she had noticed a moment earlier. One footprint. Shallow. Pressed into yesterday's mud. Not blurred. Not stepped over. Simply there. She studied it. She did not touch it. She rarely touched clues. She preferred to observe them quietly. Things revealed more when left undisturbed. The footprint was larger than Mr. Flint's. He had small feet, neat steps, always placed with a certain tidiness. This print was wider, heavier, a different shoe, a different pattern, a different person. She followed the angle. It faced the door, directly toward it. Not angled right, not angled left. Someone had stood there. For a moment, maybe for longer. Miss Marple straightened again. She looked at the door frame, at the small gap beneath the wood. A thin line of dust sat undisturbed. No sign of a recent sweep. No sign of the door opening. Mr. Flint would never ignore dust. He ran a tidy shop. A very tidy shop. A small dragged mark caught her eye. Just beside the footprint. Light. Barely visible. But clear enough for her. She leaned closer. The dragged mark wasn't long. Not heavy. Not deep. Someone had slid a heel. Or hesitated while turning. Or shifted weight in uncertainty. People shifted weight when unsure. Or when guilty. Or when anxious. She did not decide which one yet. It was too early. She simply noted the sign. Miss Marple listened. The lane held its calm, but there was a small wrongness in the silence. She had learned to hear that kind of wrongness long ago. A missing sound told as much as a present one. Normally, she would hear Mr. Flint moving upstairs. A kettle, a chair leg, a small footstep directly above the shop. He lived lightly. He moved softly, but he was consistent. He made the same morning sounds every day. Today, nothing. Not a tap, not a shuffle, not a kettle hiss, not even the faint creak of his old floorboards. Miss Marple looked up at the chimney again. Still no smoke, not even a trace. He had not lit the fire. He had not begun his morning. He had not followed his pattern. Her instincts aligned quietly, not with alarm, not with fear, just with recognition. Something had shifted in this little corner of the village. Something small, something subtle, something that most people would walk past. But Miss Marple did not walk past such things. She paused. She collected them. She arranged them in her mind. She took one soft breath. Then she spoke. Calm, steady, almost conversational. Something is not quite in order. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but the words felt firm, certain, placed exactly where they needed to be. She stepped back from the door. Her eyes followed the footprint once more. Her thoughts tightened. Her logic settled, because whatever was waiting behind this door was about to make the quiet morning much less quiet. Miss Marple stayed by the door, not pressing, not rushing, just watching the small details arrange themselves. Footsteps approached from the lane, calm, measured, familiar. Doctor Lambert appeared first, medical bag in hand, scarf tucked tightly against the cold. He nodded to Miss Marple. Out early, he said gently. She returned the nod. So are you. He followed her gaze toward the shop. He paused. His expression shifted. Not alarmed, just alert. What's this? He asked. Miss Marple stepped slightly aside. Mr. Flint has not opened, she said, nor lit his fire. Dr. Lambert frowned. That's unlike him. He tried the door handle. It stayed firm. He knocked once, twice. No answer. No movement behind the wood. He stepped back. He looked at the windows. He looked up at the chimney. No smoke. No glow. No sound. He keeps a strict routine, Dr. Lambert said. This is odd. Before Miss Marple replied, another set of footsteps approached. Heavier, steadier, more deliberate. Constable Redding turned the corner. He carried his notebook under one arm. He raised a hand in greeting. Morning, he said. Then he saw their faces. His posture shifted, not tense, just attentive. What's wrong? Miss Marple pointed to the door. Mr. Flint has not opened, she said. And there is a footprint. Redding walked over. He bent low. He examined the print. He examined the dragged mark beside it. His brow tightened. Lightly, thoughtfully. This isn't his shoe, he said. He looked closer. Too big, too heavy. Wrong pattern. He stood again. He moved to the door frame. He ran one finger along the thin line of dust, still untouched. He nodded once. Then again. Unusual, he said quietly. Dr. Lambert tried the handle again. Still locked, still unmoving. He leaned toward the window. He cupped his hands to block the glare. He peered inside. Shadows only, he murmured. No movement. Constable Redding stepped to the side window. He checked the latch. Secure. Not forced. Not disturbed. Miss Marple stood behind them, hands folded in her shawl. Her voice soft, her eyes thoughtful. Mr. Flint is a punctual man, she said. He should have opened by now. Redding nodded. Yes, he should have. Dr. Lambert moved toward the side path. He checked the narrow strip of ground leading to the back. No fresh prints, no signs of activity. Nothing that suggested Mr. Flint had stepped out early. He returned. No exit from the back, he said. No sign he left the house at all. Redding exhaled slowly. Not anxious, just processing. Locked door, he said. No fire. No morning movement. Footprint that isn't his. Miss Marple looked at the door once more. Her voice remained calm, but the weight behind it settled quietly. This is not his pattern, she said. Redding closed his notebook. I think, he said, we should take a closer look inside. He reached for the handle again. He tested it. Firm. Still locked. Then he stepped back. He nodded to Dr. Lambert. He nodded to Miss Marple. "Something here," he said softly, "is not ordinary." And the next action they took would change the quiet morning entirely. Constable Redding finally eased the key into the lock. He turned it slowly. No resistance, no unusual catch. Just the quiet click of a normal door opening at an abnormal time. Miss Marple stepped inside behind him. She didn't rush. She never rushed into a room. She preferred to let the room speak first. The air felt still. Not cold, not warm, just untouched, as if morning had not entered yet. Dr. Lambert scanned the counter. Redding checked the corners. Miss Marple stood near the middle of the room. Her eyes moved in small, careful steps. She always began with the things that stayed the same. Then she looked for what disagreed with them. The floor had been swept, recently swept. Lines neat, corners clean, no debris. Mr. Flint swept every night, not every morning. This meant the sweep had been done before closing. Yet, near the back shelf, she saw something that didn't belong. A bag, medium-sized, brown, dusty. She stepped closer. Dust sat on the top like a thin layer of time. It wasn't disturbed. No handprint, no smear, no sign that Mr. Flint had opened it today, or even yesterday. Yet the rest of the shop was clean. Very clean. Mr. Flint never allowed dust. Miss Marple lowered her head slightly. Her mind arranged the contradiction. "A dusty bag," she said softly. In a freshly swept room, Redding moved to her side. He touched nothing. He crouched to examine the bottom edge. "Someone placed it here recently," he murmured, "and no one moved it after." "Doctor." Lambert walked to the counter. He paused. He leaned in. He pointed. A smudge, small, red, on the wood. Miss Marple joined him. She looked closely. "Wax," she said. "Not paint, not ink. Wax." Redding stepped over. "Sealing wax?" he asked. Miss Marple nodded. She remembered Mrs. Thornwell mentioning someone buying wax recently. Someone nervous. Someone uncertain. She stored the detail quietly. She didn't say it yet. Her eyes moved along the counter. Everything else was orderly. Pens lined straight. Paper stacked. Twine rolled neatly. Except for one small item. A ruler. Placed sideways. Not aligned. Mr. Flint never left tools sideways. He corrected such things without thinking. Every time. Miss Marple touched nothing. She only observed. "A misplaced object," she said softly. "And that is not his habit." Redding nodded. "Someone else was here," he said. "At least, before the door was locked." Miss Marple didn't answer immediately. She studied the bag again. She studied the wax smear. She studied the misplaced ruler. 3 small clues. 3 small contradictions. 3 small truths pointing in the same direction. She stepped back. Her eyes drifted upward toward the stairs that led to the living quarters. Still no sound. Still no movement. Still no sign of Mr. Flint. Redding followed her gaze. He swallowed lightly. "Should we check upstairs?" he asked. Miss Marple nodded once. Calm. Quiet. Certain. Because the first breadcrumb had already appeared, and the next one waited at the top of those silent stairs. Constable Redding led the way upstairs. Miss Marple followed at a steady pace. "Doctor." Lambert came behind them, careful not to disturb anything. The steps creaked lightly. Not from weight, just from age. At the top, the small sitting room came into view. Quiet. Still. Untouched. Everything rested exactly where it had been the night before. At least, almost everything. Miss Marple stopped just inside the doorway. Her eyes traced the space, a chair near the window, a folded blanket, a small table beside it. The usual layout. Redding stepped forward. He looked toward the corner where Mr. Flint usually kept his travel bag. It sat on the floor, closed, dusty, undisturbed. Miss Marple moved closer. She ran one fingertip along the air above it. She didn't touch the bag. She only noted the layer of dust, thick enough to show days, not hours. If he planned to travel, she said softly, this bag would not have dust. Dr. Lambert nodded. He told me last week he might visit his sister. Perhaps he... Miss Marple shook her head gently. No. If he meant to go, the bag would be open, clothes would be out, or the bag would be gone entirely. But not dusty, not forgotten. Redding checked the table. A pair of glasses lay beside a small stack of envelopes. One envelope open, two closed. Nothing else disturbed. Miss Marple looked at the glasses. She tilted her head. "Not right," she murmured. Dr. Lambert approached. "What do you see?" she pointed. "Mr. Flint always places his glasses on the small tray, never on the table. He said tables scratch lenses." Redding leaned in. "True." The tray sat empty 2 inches away. "And," Miss Marple added, "they are too far from the chair. He would not set them there, not after reading, not accidentally." Redding frowned. "So someone moved them? Or placed them?" Miss Marple corrected. Calm, steady, firm. Her eyes scanned the room again. The blanket on the chair felt oddly folded, too neat, too crisp, as if smoothed by someone who did not know how it normally Saturday. Miss Marple moved her hand an inch above it. She didn't touch it. She observed the folds. Each line was straight, perfectly straight. Mr. Flint never folded anything perfectly. He folded things simply, not with precision. "This arrangement," she said quietly, "does not feel like him." Redding stepped back. He looked at the glasses again. He looked at the bag. He looked at the blanket. "All placed," he said. Miss Marple nodded once. "Yes. Someone wanted this scene to look a certain way." Dr. Lambert's voice lowered. "You mean staged?" Miss Marple did not answer directly. She kept her eyes on the room. Her thoughts settled like small stones in a row. Patterns forming, contradictions aligning, truth taking shape. She looked toward the small bedroom door. Closed. Silent. Waiting. Redding followed her gaze. He reached for the knob. He hesitated. Miss Marple spoke softly. "The next contradiction," she said, "is likely behind that door." Constable Redding placed his hand on the bedroom door. He was about to turn the knob when a sound rose from downstairs. A heavy step. Then another. Slow. Uneven. Almost dragging. Redding paused. Dr. Lambert looked toward the staircase. Miss Marple turned her head slightly. She listened. She always listened before she moved. Another step. Closer. Then a faint scrape. Redding straightened. "I'll check," he said quietly. He stepped back down the narrow stairs. Miss Marple and Dr. Lambert followed at a steady pace. They reached the shop floor just as the front door opened. A man filled the doorway. Broad shoulders, rough coat, red scarf wound too tightly around his neck, gloves with torn stitching across the palms, boots caked with dried mud that did not match the tidy floor of the shop. He stopped when he saw them. Not naturally, not casually, more like someone caught halfway through a thought. Constable Redding moved toward him. "Mr. Harwood," he said. The tone was polite, but firm. Harwood nodded once. Barely. His eyes didn't settle on anyone. They flicked left, then right, then down, never steady. "Morning," Harwood muttered, his voice tight, not confident, not relaxed. As if squeezed through a narrow gap, Redding crossed his arms. "You're here early," he said. Harwood shrugged. "Just passing." His words came too quickly, too prepared, as if he'd chosen them before entering. Miss Marple watched him quietly. She always watched quietly. She didn't stare. She didn't challenge. She simply observed the rhythm of a person, and his rhythm was off. She noticed his boots again, mud collected thick on the edges, a pale brown. From the outer fields, not from the lane, not from the path leading to Mr. Flint's shop. A detail most would miss, a detail she did not. Redding pointed to the shop interior. "Mr. Flint hasn't opened," he said. His tone invited a response. Harwood's sharp blink was the first answer. A tiny twitch. Barely seen, but seen. "I wouldn't know," Harwood said. "Too fast, too flat." Dr. Lambert glanced at Miss Marple. She gave him a small nod. She had already placed Harwood's nervousness in the right part of her mind. Harwood stepped forward. One boot scraped the floor. He avoided looking at the stairs. He avoided looking at the counter. He avoided looking at the dusty bag. People avoided things for reasons. Miss Marple stored that thought. Redding motioned him back. "We're examining the shop," he said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Harwood stopped. He swallowed. Hard. "I've done nothing," he muttered. The sentence arrived early, before anyone accused him, before anyone questioned him. A sentence spoken by someone who felt the need to defend before being challenged. Miss Marple stepped closer. Calm. Gentle. "Are you quite sure?" she asked. Her tone wasn't accusing, just steady. Harwood pulled his scarf higher. A nervous gesture. His hand trembled, slightly, barely, but enough. "I said I'm innocent," he insisted. He stepped back toward the door. Redding didn't follow him. He simply watched. Miss Marple's eyes drifted to Harwood's boots again. The mud, the thickness, the color. Her voice lowered to a soft breath. "That mud," she whispered, "did not come from this lane. And that small detail shifted everything." Miss Marple stepped out of the shop with quiet certainty. The morning still held its calm, but the air around her felt different now. Not tense, not alarming, just filled with a small shift in pattern. She recognized those shifts. They always led somewhere. Mr. Harwood had left in a hurry. Boots scraping, eyes avoiding, breath uneven. Miss Marple stored every detail. But she needed something else. A second thread. A place where small secrets slipped through cracks without noticing. The post office. Always the post office. She walked down the lane. Slow, steady, purpose in every step. Letters, stamps, parcels, whispers, nothing passed through Street Mary Mead without the post office knowing first. Mrs. Thornwell stood behind the counter when she arrived. Neat apron. Hair pinned back, glasses perched low. She ran the post office the same way she ran her household, orderly, punctual, exact. "Morning, Miss Marple," Mrs. Thornwell said, her tone polite, but curious. She had already sensed the disturbance in the air. People like her always sensed it early. "Good morning," Miss Marple answered. She stepped closer. She kept her voice gentle. "I wonder if anyone has been in recently, acting a little out of sorts." Mrs. Thornwell hesitated. Not out of refusal, out of thought. She tapped her fingers lightly on the counter, a habit she used when recalling details. "Well," she began slowly, "there was someone yesterday." Her eyes narrowed behind her glasses. "Bought sealing wax, red wax, seemed in a hurry." Miss Marple nodded. "Did they mention a purpose?" "No," Thornwell said. "Wouldn't look me in the eye." Dropped coins, hands shaking, left quickly. Miss Marple's mind clicked gently into place. A smudge of red wax in Mr. Flint's shop, a nervous buyer at the post office. A small link forming. "Anyone else?" Miss Marple asked softly. Mrs. Thornwell thought again. "One more thing," she said. "A few letters, posted late in the afternoon, all to the same address, all unsigned." Miss Marple's eyes lifted. "Unsigned?" "Yes, just the address. Neat handwriting, but the envelopes were handled too long, edges warm, paper softened. Someone nervous wrote them." She paused, and no replies came back. Miss Marple absorbed every word. Unanswered letters, sealing wax, nervous hands. A pattern grew. "Could you describe the person?" she asked. "Mrs." Thornwell nodded. Medium height, coat too big, scarf pulled high, spoke quietly, almost whispered. Miss Marple did not react outwardly, but inside, the shape of the second thread became clearer. "Thank you," she said kindly. "You've been most helpful." Mrs. Thornwell leaned forward slightly. "Is something wrong, Miss Marple?" Miss Marple gave her a small, calm smile. "I'm not entirely sure yet, but I suspect someone has been keeping a truth they can no longer hold." She stepped back toward the door. The post office bell chimed softly as she left, a simple sound, but today it felt like a signal, because the description Mrs. Thornwell gave matched someone Miss Marple had been meaning to visit. Someone who lived on the outskirts. Someone quiet. Mrs. Eliza Ward, and Miss Marple knew that was where the next clue waited. Miss Marple left the post office with her thoughts arranged in a quiet line. Not rushed, not scattered, just steady. She had enough pieces to choose a direction, and that direction led to the outskirts of Street Mary Mead, to the small cottage rented by Mrs. Eliza Ward. She walked the narrow path toward it. The hedges grew higher here. The village sounds softened. Fewer footsteps, fewer voices, more quiet. It suited someone who wanted to remain unnoticed. Eliza Ward had arrived only a month ago, polite, soft-spoken, helpful when asked, but private, very private. Miss Marple respected privacy, but she also recognized when privacy hid weight. The cottage came into view, a small building with pale walls and a narrow porch. Simple, neat, predictable. But something wasn't predictable today. The gate stood slightly open, just an inch, not wide, not inviting, as if someone passed through without stopping to close it. Miss Marple pushed it gently. It moved too easily. No resistance, just a smooth swing. She stepped to the door. She tapped once. No answer. She tapped again. Still nothing. She tried the handle. It shifted, unlocked. Unusual for someone as cautious as Eliza. Miss Marple entered. The air inside felt unsettled, not messy, not chaotic. Just touched by movement that didn't belong to morning calm. Her eyes moved first to the small table near the window. Draft letters lay scattered across it. 4 pages, 3 with crossed-out lines. 1 only half-written. Paper edges bent. Ink strokes uneven. Someone had been writing in distress. Miss Marple stepped closer. She didn't touch the pages. She only studied them lightly. The handwriting matched the style Mrs. Thornwell described. Neat, but pressured. Letters tilted with hesitation. The script of someone afraid to say too much. Beside the letters lay a small object. A brooch, oval, silver, worn at the edges. It did not match the cottage. It felt older, heavier with meaning. Miss Marple knew sentimental objects when she saw them. This one held a story. She glanced toward the coat stand. Eliza's coat hung there, the hem damp, as if worn outside early that morning. Shoes beneath it held dried mud, the same pale brown mud found on Harwood's boots. Same texture, same field origin. A small thread formed, clearer now. Miss Marple walked toward the back window. The curtain hung crooked, pulled too sharply to the side. Someone looked out in a rush, or checked for someone approaching. A small sign, but a real one. She looked around the room once more. No teacup, no open book, no breakfast. No sign of a morning routine. Eliza Ward had left suddenly, or been made to leave suddenly. Miss Marple stepped back toward the table. Her eyes rested on the unfinished letter. Her instincts paused on the last written word. A name, barely formed, cut off mid-stroke. Someone she meant to warn, someone she feared. Miss Marple lowered her voice, barely above a breath. She didn't leave by choice. Her eyes lifted toward the open door. And she isn't far. Miss Marple left the cottage quietly. She did not close the door fully. She left it as she found it. She preferred not to disturb the order of things until the order explained itself. The path behind the cottage stretched toward the outer field. Narrow, uneven, soft underfoot. She knew these tracks well. People used them when they wanted to be alone, or when they wanted not to be seen. Eliza Ward would not have gone far. Not without her coat, not without her bag, not with that unfinished letter on the table. Miss Marple moved steadily, her pace gentle, her eyes alert. The morning mist clung to the hedges. Each step carried a faint echo, not loud, just enough to remind her that she was walking towards someone who needed help. She reached the first turn. A small woods shelter sat behind the trees. Old, weather-worn, a place schoolchildren used in sudden rain, a place villagers used when tired during long walks. Miss Marple approached it. She paused. She listened first. Always listen first. A faint sound reached her. Not a word. Not a cry. Just a small breath. Shallow. Strained. Like someone trying to become smaller than fear allowed. Miss Marple stepped inside. Eliza Ward sat on the bench. Hunched. Still. Hands clenched into her sleeves. Her shoulders shook lightly. Her hair was loose. Her eyes wide. She looked like someone who had run until her strength stopped cooperating. "Eliza," Miss Marple said softly. No alarm, no pressure, just calm recognition. Eliza flinched at the sound. Then she looked up. Her eyes filled quickly, not with tears alone, with relief. Relief held tightly behind fear. I didn't know where to go," she whispered. Her voice barely carried across the small space. "You came here," Miss Marple said gently. "That tells me you wanted safety." Eliza nodded. Slow, uncertain. Her breath trembled. Miss Marple sat beside her, not close enough to crowd, just close enough to steady. "Tell me," she said softly. "When did you leave the cottage?" Eliza swallowed. She looked down at her shaking hands. "Early," she murmured. "Too early. I heard steps outside. I thought he followed me. I couldn't stay." Miss Marple rested one hand lightly on the bench, not touching Eliza, but offering presence. "You did the right thing," she said. Eliza squeezed her eyes shut. "I didn't know where he was. I didn't know if he was watching. I didn't know if he saw the letters." Miss Marple nodded. "The letters troubled you." Eliza opened her eyes again. She looked toward the trees. Her voice dropped. "He knows. I think he knows what I wrote, what I kept, what I found." Miss Marple kept her breathing steady. Her tone stayed calm. "And what did you find, my dear?" Eliza looked at her. Her fear sharpened. "It was him. I'm sure of it." Miss Marple's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in surprise, in confirmation. Because the next words Eliza whispered would name the person Miss Marple already suspected. Eliza held the edge of the bench tightly. Her fingers stayed curled. Her breath came in small, uneven pulls. She tried to speak, but the words hesitated. Miss Marple waited. Quiet, gentle, patient. She understood that truth needed space before it could move. Finally, Eliza exhaled. "I should have told someone sooner," she whispered, "but I couldn't. Not after what happened years ago." Miss Marple gave her a small nod. "Take your time." Eliza looked down. Her shoes trembled slightly against the ground. "It began with a signature," she said. "Not mine, not legally, but it had my name on it." Miss Marple kept her eyes steady. She did not interrupt. She let the pieces fall in their own order. "It was forged," Eliza continued. "Years ago, on a loan, a large one. My name was placed there without my consent." Miss Marple folded her hands. "And this loan harmed you?" Eliza nodded. "It ruined everything. They came for repayment. I couldn't prove it wasn't me. I tried. I begged. No one listened. My record was clean. But that signature destroyed my life." She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her trembling hand. "I lost my job. I lost my home. I lost the people who trusted me. I left the town because I couldn't bear the shame." Miss Marple leaned forward slightly. "Someone gained from this." Not a question. A quiet statement. Eliza nodded again. "Mr. Harwood." The name dropped like a small stone between them. "He needed the money. He needed a clean name. He used mine. He forged the paper. Then he told everyone I had made a foolish choice." Miss Marple's expression did not change, but her mind arranged the truth in a sharp line. "And you hid your identity," she said softly, "to escape his story." Eliza swallowed hard. "Yes, when I came here, I thought I could start again. Different name, different place. But he found me. He always finds a way." Miss Marple glanced at the muddy footprints on Eliza's shoes. They matched Harwood's boots. A quiet confirmation. Eliza pulled something from her coat pocket. A folded page. Edges worn, lines creased from too much handling. "This is the proof," she said softly. "I found the original loan paper last week, hidden in a file at the old office. His writing, his marks, his lies." Miss Marple looked at the page without taking it. "You showed it to someone." Eliza nodded. "Last night. To Mr. Flint. He promised to help me. He said he knew Harwood years ago. He said he recognized his handwriting. He said it was enough to clear my name." Miss Marple breathed slowly. "And then?" Eliza's hands tightened again. "He got angry. Harwood. He followed me. He came to the shop. There was a struggle. Small, but real. Mr. Flint told me to run. So I did." Miss Marple's voice lowered. "And Mr. Flint?" Eliza looked up, her face pale, her breath shaking. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I think he was still inside when Harwood locked the door." Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. Because that meant the truth upstairs was waiting for them. Miss Marple and Eliza walked slowly back toward the cottage path. Eliza leaned against the trees for balance. Her breath steadied little by little. Miss Marple kept a gentle pace beside her. No rush, no pressure. Only calm steps toward the truth that waited. Once Eliza was safe with Dr. Lambert near the shelter, Miss Marple returned to the shop. She needed silence. She needed space. She needed the room to speak without interruption. Constable Redding stood near the counter when she entered. He looked worried, not panicked, just unsure. "Did you find her?" he asked. Miss Marple nodded. "She is frightened, but safe." Redding exhaled, relieved. Then he looked around the room again. "Something here is wrong," he said softly. Miss Marple stepped beside him. "Yes," she agreed, "and the mistakes are very small." She moved to the travel bag first. She pointed at the dust. "Mr. Harwood said Mr. Flint was preparing to travel," she said. "But this dust shows no movement, no packing, no opening, no use at all." Redding nodded. "That's true," Miss Marple continued. "And this ticket." She lifted a corner of the paper without touching it. "The date is tomorrow. If Mr. Flint planned to leave today, he would not have purchased a ticket for the next day." Redding frowned. He could have changed his mind. Miss Marple shook her head gently. "Not Mr. Flint. He makes decisions early. He does not buy a ticket and leave it lying about. This date is wrong." She walked to the counter. She leaned closer to the small smear of red wax. "You see this?" she asked. Redding bent over. He nodded. "From sealing wax?" "Yes," Miss Marple replied. "But the smear is fresh, not dried, not old. Mr. Flint has not used sealing wax in weeks. He keeps all wax locked in a drawer. This smear belongs to someone else." She rose again. She pointed to the ruler lying sideways. "A small thing," she said. "But Mr. Flint is tidy. He never leaves objects at angles. Everything has its place. Everything sits straight. This was placed by someone who did not know his habits." Redding looked around the room. His eyes widened slowly. "You're saying he didn't arrange any of this?" Miss Marple nodded. "Someone tried to make the room look untouched. But small things tell a different story." She moved to the window. She pointed at the streak of mud near the frame. "The color," she said softly, "matches Mr. Harwood's boots. The same pale brown, the same dried texture. He brought it inside." Redding ran a hand over his jaw. "That ties him here." "Not just here," Miss Marple replied. "Here after the room should have been still." She stepped back. Her eyes moved toward the stairs again. Someone wanted this scene to appear calm, but calm scenes do not carry such contradictions. Redding swallowed. "Do you think Mr. Flint is upstairs?" Miss Marple breathed out slowly. "That," she said quietly, "is what we must confirm. Right now." Constable Redding stepped outside first. Miss Marple followed him, steady and calm. "Doctor." Lambert came behind them, his bag in hand. No one spoke at first. They needed the quiet to hear what the ground would say. Redding moved toward the back of the shop. The soil there held clearer marks. He crouched. He brushed the air above the prints. Miss Marple stood beside him, her hands folded neatly. 2 sets of footprints. Side by side at first, then apart, then sharp. One set lighter, quicker, uneven. A woman's steps, Eliza's steps. The other set heavy, deep, pressed with force. The pattern unmistakable. Mr. Harwood's boots. Dr. Lambert leaned closer. He chased her, he said softly. Redding nodded. Looks that way. Miss Marple did not answer. She followed the prints with her eyes. They ran toward the trees, into the narrow opening that led into the woods. She stepped forward, slow, quiet. The others followed. The trail grew clearer as they entered the shaded area. Light soil, soft ground. Footprints held their shape. Eliza's steps darted left, then right, not from aimless running, from fear, from trying to break away. Harwood's prints stayed steady, heavy, direct. He followed her path without hesitation. Miss Marple studied the spacing. Her stride shortened, she said. She was tiring. Dr. Lambert nodded, and he wasn't. They walked farther. The prints curved sharply. A half circle. Not natural, not accidental. Redding frowned. Why would they turn here? Miss Marple answered softly. They didn't. He did. He turned back. Redding looked again. She was right. The lighter prints continued briefly, then stopped. Not from collapse, from the ground becoming too firm to hold shape. They continued but faintly. But Harwood's heavy boots left a different story. They turned sharply, a clean arc, back toward the shop. Straight, deliberate. He returned, Redding said quietly, to stage the scene. Miss Marple nodded. He needed the appearance of calm. He needed the room to look untouched. He needed the story to be his. They followed the heavier prints, back along the curve, back toward the shop, back toward the place where the contradictions waited for them. But Miss Marple stopped suddenly, her eyes fixed on the ground. A small break in the pattern. Not deep, not clear, just a faint scuff. A heel twist. The sign of hesitation. He paused here, she murmured. Why would he pause? Redding looked around. Maybe he heard something. Miss Marple shook her head gently. No, he changed his plan here. She looked ahead, then down, then toward a patch of broken twigs. It wasn't part of the main trail. It branched off, subtle, overlooked. Miss Marple stepped toward it, one careful step, then another. Someone else walked this way, she said softly. Redding stiffened. Someone else? Miss Marple nodded, and whoever it was did not want to be seen. Constable Redding returned to the shop first. Miss Marple followed him with steady steps. Dr. Lambert stayed close behind, ready for whatever needed his eye. Inside, the air felt heavier now, quiet still, but no longer calm. Mr. Harwood stood near the counter. He had come back. Too soon, too conveniently. His scarf hung unevenly. His gloves dangled from one hand. His boots left new marks on the floor. He turned when they entered. His shoulders stiffened. His jaw tightened. He tried to mask it with a forced shrug. Just checking on things, he said. His voice lacked confidence. It wavered, lightly, but enough. Redding approached him slowly. Mr. Harwood, he said, we found a trail. Harwood blinked. Trail? His tone rose half a note, as if surprised, but the surprise came too quickly, too rehearsed. Miss Marple stepped beside Redding. Her voice remained calm. We followed footprints into the woods, she said. One set light, one set heavy. Harwood laughed. A hollow sound. Too sharp, too thin. You can't blame me for footprints, he said. Miss Marple looked at his boots, then back at him. We can when the pattern matches exactly. He pulled his scarf higher. A nervous tug. Another small sign. I walk everywhere, he insisted. I pass through the woods all the time. Redding shook his head. These prints weren't casual, he said. They chased someone. Harwood's jaw flexed. You're wrong. I wasn't chasing anyone. Miss Marple folded her hands gently. No one said the prints were yours at first. You told us. Harwood froze. A pause. He had answered a question that hadn't been asked. The room held that silence for a moment. Dr. Lambert stepped closer. "We also found the angle of the prints," he said. "Yours turned back. Hers did not." Harwood looked toward the exit, only for a second. But the second was enough. Miss Marple continued. "Soft, clear. You returned to the shop," she said. "You tried to restore the room. You placed the ruler. You moved the glasses. You folded the blanket." Harwood shook his head. "No, that's coincidence. Anyone could have done that." Miss Marple tilted her head. "No, not anyone. Only someone who wanted to hide what happened. Only someone who needed the morning to look ordinary." Harwood stepped back. One step, then another. His breath grew uneven. His eyes darted around the room. He searched for a story that could save him. He didn't find one. Redding raised a hand. "Mr. Harwood, do you want to explain why your boots match every mark outside?" Harwood swallowed hard. "I was nearby, that's all." Miss Marple's tone softened even further. "I believe you were nearby," she said, "but not by accident." He glared at her. For the first time, openly. Fear, not anger, filled his expression. Miss Marple did not move. She simply finished the line he had tried so hard to avoid. "You followed her," she said. Quiet, measured, certain. Harwood's shoulders sagged. His breath hitched. And with that small reaction, Miss Marple knew the final truth, waited only one step away. The room settled into a tight stillness. Not tense, not loud, just waiting. Miss Marple stood near the counter, hands folded, gaze steady on Mr. Harwood. She spoke gently, not accusing, not harsh, simply stating what the morning had shown her. "Let us begin," she said, "with what we know." Harwood shifted. His boots scraped lightly across the floor, a small sound, a telling one. "Eliza Ward came to you," Miss Marple began. "She found the old loan paper, your handwriting, your forged signature, your deception." Harwood swallowed, but he didn't speak. "She brought that proof to Mr. Flint," Miss Marple continued. "He recognized the writing at once. He told her to stay calm. He promised to help her, and he asked her to return in the morning." Redding nodded. That part fit every detail. "But you followed her," Miss Marple said. "Not by accident. You watched her leave the office last week. You saw her searching for old files, and you feared she found the right one." Harwood clenched his jaw. His shoulders tightened. Another small sign. "You went to Mr. Flint's shop last night," Miss Marple said softly. "You confronted him. You wanted the paper. He refused to hand it over." Dr. Lambert stepped closer. "That explains the disturbance." Miss Marple nodded. A struggle occurred. Small, brief, enough to shake the room but not destroy it. She pointed toward the glasses on the table. "They fell. You picked them up, but you placed them incorrectly. Too far from the chair, not in the tray he always used." Harwood's breath trembled. Barely, but Miss Marple saw it. "You folded the blanket," she added. "Neatly. Too neatly. Mr. Flint never folded blankets with precision. He folded them quickly. Simple folds. Yours were too perfect." Harwood looked at the blanket. His eyes tightened. "You also moved the ruler," Miss Marple said. "You placed it sideways. You thought it looked casual. But Mr. Flint never left objects sideways. His habits betrayed you." Redding took a step forward. "And the sealing wax?" Miss Marple glanced at the counter. "The red smear," she said. "Eliza saw him use sealing wax last night. When she ran, the wax stuck to her sleeve. You brushed against the counter later and left the smear. Fresh, clear, out of place." Harwood's face grew pale. He opened his mouth. No words formed. Miss Marple continued, calm as ever. "When Eliza escaped, you chased her. Your footprints matched perfectly. Her steps were quick. Yours were heavy. You followed her into the woods." Redding nodded. "We saw the turn." "Yes," Miss Marple said. "You turned back. You returned to the shop. You tried to tidy the scene, to make it quiet, normal, ordinary. Anything that would delay. Questions. Harwood finally spoke. A hoarse whisper. I didn't mean... Miss Marple raised one hand slightly. Not to silence him, just to finish the truth. You feared your lies would come out, she said, so you created a scene meant to hide them. Harwood stepped backward. One slow step, then another. And just as he reached the doorway, another voice called his name from behind. The room settled again, not tense now, just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows truth when it finally steps into the light. Miss Marple stood near the counter, her voice soft, her tone steady. Truth rises slowly, she said. It takes its time, but it rises all the same. Eliza Ward sat on a small chair by the window, her hands no longer trembling, her breath calmer. She listened to Miss Marple with careful attention, as if each word lifted a small weight from her shoulders. Guilt erodes the spirit, Miss Marple continued. It makes people hide. It makes them run, and it makes them try to tidy what cannot be tidied. Eliza nodded, a slow, grateful nod. She held the folded loan paper in her lap. Not with fear now, with quiet relief. Constable Redding stepped aside to give her space. Dr. Lambert brought her a cup of warm tea. Simple kindness. The kind this village knew well. Outside, the morning regained its calm. The lane breathed again. Soft, steady, safe. Miss Marple placed one gentle hand on Eliza's shoulder. You have peace now, she said softly. And peace, my dear, is allowed to stay. But as Miss Marple turned toward the door, a new sound rose from the lane. Miss Marple stepped outside. The lane felt still again. Calm in the way. Villages returned to themselves after a long morning of questions. She breathed once. Slow. Gentle. Then she noticed it. A small envelope on the ground. Plain. Unstamped. Her name written in a careful hand. Not Mr. Flint's. Not Eliza's. Someone else. Someone watching from the edges. She bent slightly. She did not open it. She only studied the handwriting. Neat, measured, deliberate. Constable Redding stepped toward her. Another letter? He asked. Miss Marple nodded. Yes. And whoever placed it here did so very quietly. She slipped the envelope into her pocket. Her eyes moved toward the far end of the lane. A single footprint rested near the hedge. Fresh, clear, pointing away. Miss Marple straightened. Some secrets never sleep. Davis returns with a gentle smile. He thanks everyone for joining the mystery today. He asks softly, which moment caught your attention first? Then adds, and where are you listening from tonight? He invites listeners to share their thoughts in the comments. He promises a fresh mystery tomorrow, warm and ready for another cozy evening. He closes with the familiar line, tomorrow, another kettle will boil.